get started. You have the audience pan. Local food systems are supported by people who make a decision to get the most of their nutritional needs from people growing food around them. Now, the local food system in Athens is advanced and it's really well-rounded, but the cost of locally produced meat can prohibit some people, like you and me, from being able to eat as locally as we might like. So if you're in that situation, I think it's time to survey your own backyard and really assess the amount of space you have and what you can grow in that space. And what if you don't have a lot of space? Well, for a lot of students that's the case, but what I think is that's where rabbits come in. So I've been raising rabbits for only about 4 months, and I've already been convinced of the many benefits that they can provide you. So I'm going to talk you through how to get started with your own backyard meat rabbit operation. From the reasons why you might want to do this, to choosing what breed of rabbits you want to have, to the type of housing options you have, and then how to feed them. So one of the main reasons why I decided to raise rabbits was to improve my own self-sufficiency. Rabbits are arguably the most space and feed efficient meat animal available. So how you usually start would be to get a breeding trio. So that's 1 buck and 2 does. The names are just like deer. I don't know why. According to Mother Earth News, just 1 breeding trio can provide you with up to 600 pounds of meat in 1 year. Now, from my experience, that would require breeding them more intensively than I'm comfortable with, so I would say you probably need about 4 breeding does to reach those numbers, but it's still really impressive. And compare that, let's talk about the numbers. Each doe can provide you with about 6 litters per year with an average of 8 kits per litter, so that's 48 kits in a year. You slaughter them at about 5 pounds live weight, which is 2.5 pounds all cleaned and ready to go. And so from each doe, that's 120 pounds of meat per year. Now compare that to a beef steer that can reach about 400 pounds in 1 year, but that beef steer requires 7 pounds of grain per each pound of meat that it produces, whereas rabbits require just over half of that at 4 pounds of grain per pound of meat. So they're just really amazing. And also, it's a quick process. It only takes 3 months to go from breeding the doe to slaughtering the kits. And that's if your kits reach weight in about 8 weeks, which they should. So they also take less space. Rabbits require a minimum amount of space of 1 hutch that's 2 feet wide, 3 feet long, and about 2 feet tall so they can stand up. And you know, that's the bare minimum, and bigger is much nicer, but they do just fine in that amount of space, especially if they have an outdoor pen that they can play in sometimes. They're also a small time commitment. So I think I spend about 15 to 30 minutes twice a day feeding and watering my rabbits, and that's with a fair amount of snuggle time built in. And the slaughtering isn't a huge problem either. I haven't reached this point myself. My oldest litter is just reaching slaughtering weight now, but I have read that once you get some experience, each rabbit will go from live to ready to be cooked or put in the freezer within 15 minutes. So theoretically, that can be pretty fast too. And don't be intimidated by the idea of slaughtering and butchering at home. Really, anyone can do it. It takes some warming up to the idea if you're like me, but there are more and more workshops available and tons of books, even videos on YouTube. But I still think the best idea is to find someone local who's been raising rabbits for a long time and just offer to help them on one of their slaughter days. And that way you'll learn all the pro tips that you'll be able to use at home. So now that I've convinced you that you should raise backyard rabbits, you need to choose what types of rabbits you're going to raise. So rabbits have been bred for many purposes. There are pet rabbits, rabbits for showing, rabbits have been bred for their pelts, but also wool for spinning. And then of course you have meat rabbits, which are bred mainly for their size. So they're 9 pounds to up to 15 pounds, I guess. They're also good for their meat-to-bone ratio, meaning that there's a lot of meat on the carcass. Their bones are relatively small. They're not big bone, they're small bone and really meaty. They're also bred for their feed efficiency, like we talked about with the steer. Hopefully you have less grain going in for more meat. The most popular breeds used in conventional rabbitries in the United States are Californian and New Zealand rabbits. And these breeds are just fine, but and you can actually find a lot of them available on Craigslist in this area, which I would urge you to check out. But I decided to go the heritage breed route, and I'll tell you about some of my reasons for this. I breed silver fox rabbits, and they were originally bred in North Canton, Ohio. So they're an Ohio breed of rabbit, which I think is really cool. They were accepted by the American Rabbit Breeders Association in 1925 after 14 years of breeding by Walter B. Garland. At adult weight, they're about 9 to 12 pounds, and they're actually a dual-purpose breed. So they're bred not only for their meat qualities, but also for their pelts, which are known for their long fur. It's about 1.5 inches long, and it has silver tips. And when you stroke it the opposite direction, it doesn't fly back, so it doesn't lay automatically back down. So I guess it's desired for that purpose. And they're also classified as endangered by the Livestock Conservancy, so I feel really good about raising them. But other good, less common meat breeds are Champagne d'Argent, which is a French breed that dates back to the 1600s, and I know there's someone fairly local breeding those because I've also seen them on Craigslist. And also giant chinchilla rabbits, which can reach up to 15 pounds at their adult weight. So now that you have your breed of rabbits chosen, you have to start thinking about where you're going to house them. Think about it. In the wild, rabbits live in holes in the ground, so shelter is very important for them. Actually, extreme heat, chilly winds, and wet weather can kill your rabbit, so you have to be serious about this. Hutches are the typical housing for all types of domesticated rabbits, and you can see on your handout a picture of a hutch, like a very typical hutch. That one has a built-in nest box. You would typically have one hutch per adult rabbit, and they would have space for either a built-in nest box like that or a nest box that you place in, which is where the doe will give birth to her baby. She fills it with her fur and some hay to make a lining, and she gives birth to her babies and raises them when they're really young in there. But you also need to think about having space for those babies once they're not so small and they're moving around and they want to play. Hutches work just fine, and it's what I use, but it just seems so far from a rabbit's natural environment that I started thinking about what some alternatives might be. So I started reading about this colony-style housing, which other homesteaders are saying has revolutionized their rabbit-raising experience. In this style, you dedicate an outbuilding to your rabbits, and it has a dirt floor and then a layer of gravel and then some straw bedding on top of it, and then you have one crate for each adult rabbit along the sides, and that is their crate, and they sleep there, and the does raise their young in there. But then they all come out and frolic and play together in the communal area, and the mating happens naturally, and it also cuts down on your time spent because you don't have to go from hutch to hutch feeding them. You can do it all in one place. And supposedly people are finding that it creates an environment that fosters healthier, happier rabbits and larger litter sizes. So I'm interested in trying this in the future. Right now I have 8 adult rabbits, so I think that it might be more efficient for me. But if you're just starting out with a breeding trio, hutches are definitely the way to go. I mean, it doesn't make sense for such a small operation. So you just have to choose what works for you. So once you have that all sorted out, the last thing you have to think about is how you're going to feed your rabbits. So rabbits need a balance of protein, fiber, carbohydrates, a little bit of fat, and a lot of micronutrients, just like we do, just like all animals do. So the conventional solution is pellets, and they also need some hay for roughage, because in the wild they would be fulfilling these requirements by eating healthy leaves, tender new shoots, and different types of bark. But these pellets, unless they're labeled organic, they've been designed by big agribusiness, and they're full of genetically modified soy, byproducts, and nutritionless wheat middlings, and even sometimes animal products like beef tallow. It is really strange. And high-quality organic pellets are available, but unfortunately the closest store that sells them is called Highland Naturals, and it's in Northeast Ohio, so it's quite a hike for someone who has a small operation. So if anyone wants to open a franchise in Southeast Ohio, I think it would be a huge hit. But recently then, there's been an increased excitement for sprouting for livestock, including rabbits, and this has been international. So when you sprout, whole grains such as wheat and barley become this nutritious, digestible, much more natural food for your rabbits. Also, sprouting increases your feed value by 6 to 8 times, and to illustrate this, if you go and buy one 50-pound bag of wheat, that can turn into 300 pounds of really nutritious food for your rabbits. So it's not only better for your rabbits, but it's saving you tons of money. So there are just so many benefits, and that's at about 9 days of sprouting. And you can see on your handout the progression through 9 days of sprouting. I think that's barley in that picture. So when you think of these sprouts, they're a lot more like wheatgrass than the sprouts that you put on your sandwich. They are about 4 inches tall, and they're tied together by this dense, tangled root system that you actually have to cut into portions for them. And you feed it whole in one chunk, so the rabbits are getting those 4 inches of sprouts, the layer of seeds, and the roots, and most of them will eat all of it. So that gives them the perfect balance of protein and fiber, but they still need that hay for roughage, and Timothy hay is a great choice for rabbits. So whether you're feeding your rabbits pellets or sprouts, they really enjoy the wild foods that would make up part of their natural diet. So they love green foods, and this could include culinary herbs, all sorts of grasses, leafy greens that you grow in your garden. They also conveniently love weeds, so whatever's plaguing your garden, for us it's vetch, but it might be plantain or violets. Try to limit the amount of dandelions and other oxalate-rich foods like spinach, but most weeds they love. Veggies are also really important for them. Cabbage is a big favorite, kohlrabi, also carrots obviously, and beet and radish tops are great ones. They love fruits as a little snack. Apples and bananas, even banana peels are great. Try to stay away from grapes. And they also need tree sticks to chew on, especially apple, pear, and maple. Those are some really good ones. Their teeth just grow continuously, so they need to keep them short, have something to chew on to do that. But before you start feeding your rabbits any wild foods, I urge you to study a list of poisonous foods. There are some strange ones you wouldn't guess: oak and cherry sticks, apple seeds, parsnips, most mushrooms, and any leaves from the nightshade family can cause big problems for your rabbits. So try to avoid those. But again, no matter what you feed them, your rabbits are going to supply you with lots of poop. And this poop, unlike chicken poop, does not need to be composted before you put it on your garden. It's ready to go, and it's super nutritious. But it also can work great with vermiculture or worm composting. So the worms break down the poop and whatever sprouts and wilted greens they didn't get to, and just turn that into this super power garden amendment that can be just a huge boost, and then you can grow more food for your rabbits. So it's all kind of a closed cycle. But really, how good will you feel eating this healthy, delicious meat that you raised in your own backyard? Rabbit tastes and looks a lot like chicken, so it's really versatile. It's also the highest domestic meat in protein per gram, and it's also loaded with vitamins and minerals that a lot of other meat doesn't have in it. It's also all white meat, and it's really low fat, and you can prepare it in many ways, so you won't get bored with this endless supply that you have coming from your backyard. So to sum it up, backyard meat rabbits are an easy, space-efficient, and fun way to play a bigger role in your own sustenance. They're just amazing little creatures, and I really enjoy raising them. It takes a little bit of planning and investment, but I think it's well worth it. So you just have to decide what breed to start with, how you're going to house them, what you're going to feed them, if you're going to start with pellets or dive into sprouting. But no matter the methods you decide on, I'm sure your love of raising rabbits will multiply quickly. Thank you.